First of all, who is this guy? Is he a staple in the socialist movement? What does he do?
Yeah.
What does he organize? Give us a little background on this individual first before we even get to the content of what he's talking about.
Yeah, Jesse Hagopian is a staple in the socialist movement. I was actually just looking at this conference was put on by Haymarket Books, which is one of the key socialist book publishers. Socialists have dozens and dozens of book publishers that do nothing but churn out socialist books. Haymarket Books actually took over from the International Socialist Organization, one of the main socialist organizers in the country. They had a little scandal a couple years ago, and now they've changed their name into Haymarket Books. But Jesse Hagopian presents for them all the time. He is a high school teacher in Seattle. He works for Black Lives Matter in school. So anytime you see Black Lives Matter curriculum showing up in school, which it's still in schools all over the country, that's coming from these people. He worked with the Zinn Education Project too, which is overtly pushing socialist curriculum in schools, and he is just all over the place. He's also involved in something called the Tempest Collective, which is a radical revolutionary socialist group that is a national collective that are actively pushing for revolution. And when we say revolution, what we mean is the overthrow of capitalism. That is always the goal of these people. And so Jesse Hagopian has actually been on the record in different clips that I posted in saying that the purpose of pushing Black Lives Matter curriculum and anti-racist curriculum into schools is explicitly to create a socialist world, because they are hyper aware that the schools are basically the largest audience that they will ever have, the largest captive audience that they will ever have. And so that is something that they're hyper focused on right now.
Well, that was one of the interesting things I think that he said. He said the way, and this is his version of revisionist history, of course, I'm just quoting him, but he said that the way that the Red Scare ended was the Black liberation movement, the Black Power movement, and he said that's going to happen again. Well, the Black Power movement, the Black liberation movement, these were violent movements. These were revolutionary movements. So it sounds to me like he's calling for that again.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you guys too, like critical race theory hasn't really been talked about in the past year and a half or so because people have been mostly focused on gender ideology. Critical race theory is about to make a comeback because what's happened in the far left communities is that the Black far left communities are actually really annoyed that the trans people are getting all the attention. And so they're riling up around critical race theory. And so that's about to start making a major comeback again. We're going to see that. But no, I mean, they are hyper aware that this is, when you look at the LGBTQ movement now, what has actually happened is there is a branch of socialism called queer Marxism. And I could go on and on about queer Marxism for days, but queer Marxists have basically hijacked legitimate, groups that were actually doing kind of normal things. We might not agree about gay marriage and that sort of thing, but that was a legitimate problem for a lot of gay people, right? Once they got the right to get married, what happened is these Marxist group came in and hijacked that particular movement and used it to push Marxism into the schools and through things like gender sexuality alliances, that sort of thing. So they are actually very hyper focused on pushing that ideology to kids in these ways. They have a program called Rethinking Schools where they actually will create materials for teachers to use in the classroom. I actually have a Rethinking Schools teacher planning textbook that I got for $8 on the internet that lays out all the social justice things they want teachers to teach. They create entire curriculum for them. And I'd say this because a lot of people are focusing on the books in classrooms. The teachers don't need books. They're creating their own curriculum. They're downloading stuff off the internet. They're zooming in other people. And so they're finding ways around all of the book stuff, all of the laws. And they're not going to stop until they get what they want.
So this fugitive pedagogy thing, when he's talking about it's fugitive or smuggler pedagogy, I think they're
Yep.
two terms for the same thing. So the teacher, if we're talking about Florida, for example, where it's not permitted to talk about trans ideology or critical race theory in the classroom, the teacher themselves are not allowed to speak about that. So is there a loophole in the law that allows a teacher that's been zoomed in a different state to do that? Or is there just no enforcement mechanism because that teacher out of state is outside the reach of Florida law enforcement?
There's no enforcement mechanism for it because, I mean, they can't go arrest Jesse Hagopian in Seattle for zooming into a classroom, right? And I would actually argue that, these laws have always been a little bit misguided because the fact of the matter is that school boards don't actually enforce curriculum in the vast majority of states. It's only in Vermont and Connecticut that school boards actually have oversight over curriculum. And so once the classroom door closes, teachers can teach whatever they want. And so I strongly recommend people, go on the social media of your kids' teachers, look at their Instagram, look at their Facebook, look at their Twitter, because if they're teaching things they shouldn't be, chances are they're going to be posting it online, and you want to make sure you know that.
So I don't know. This is confusing to me in a way, because would the teacher in Florida, this hypothetical teacher that zoomed in, a radical teacher, would they not be culpable? Would they not be able to be held accountable under Florida law because they were the ones that presented the Zoom call, even if they weren't the teacher that spoke the words on the Zoom call? Or is there literally no way that this can be enforced?
I think that that's a really good question, and that's a really good question for Ron DeSantis. And I would actually like to see his answer to that, because I don't think that this is something that anyone has actually planned for, that they were going to zoom in people from out of state. But again, how are they going to monitor that? How are they going to enforce it? I strongly pushed for the idea of cameras in classrooms a couple of years ago. Not that I'm necessarily interested in increasing the surveillance state. I think that's bad. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have eyes in those classrooms, how are you even going to know what's going on?
Yeah, or what some nonprofits do, especially in the political world, maybe this applies in a sense, a little bit in a parallel sense. What nonprofits do if they're not allowed to talk about political candidates is they say, well, official staff members don't talk about political candidates, but if we hire a speaker that comes on stage and they talk about a political candidate, well, we didn't know that in advance. It's not in our control what they say. Maybe it's that sort of plausible deniability. Okay, I want to go on to the next clip, because we do have a few of these that are all, I would say, equally as shocking. This one, we know this, but to hear it being spoken out of the mouth of a socialist, I think just helps orient us to how to fight back to this. This is a clip, if you could explain the context, where they're talking about how education, meaning the public school system, should be the primary tool used to transform a country into a socialist nation.
Yeah, so this was in a session against confronting the backlash against anti-racist education, and it just shows that they are hyper aware that education is the key to the kingdom. They are going, it's a trope, right, to say they're going after your kids, but they're going after your kids. They know that this is the key to building their socialist world, and so and they are hyper aware of that the right is really focused on books, and so I want to emphasize for people, I understand why people have been focused on books. I understand there's pornographic material in books, but what you need to understand is that because the socialists know that the conservative right are focused on books, they're going over here. So they're going to the other side. They're going into policy, they're going into curriculum, they're getting into positions of power within the administration. And I think that this clip is really illustrative of that philosophy.
Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.
Liberals and progressives want to suppress the truth and distract you from what really matters. Don't let that happen. Sign up for the new daily email that's become essential reading for true conservatives. Get the Up First newsletter. Visit thefirsttv.com and sign up today.